Okay. Okay, the time is 9:35 a.m. We'll get it again.
You will.
Okay. You're printing it.
Yeah, but we'll have it on the screen also.
Okay. Call to order a meeting of the Travis County Facilities Commission. Can I get a roll call?
President Jimmy Tabor,
Present.
Vice President Cheryl Brown,
Present.
Director Wilma Roberts,
Present.
Director Jan Lennon.
We have a forum.
Okay, item number 2, public forum citizen communication. Is there anyone desiring to discuss or comment on items directly related to the TCFC?
We have no one signed up.
Okay. Consent agenda, approval of the minutes from the December 1st, 2022 regular meeting.
That is no longer.
Oh, the minutes, that's not here with that. Okay, moving on, number 4, act or number 3, action items.
Let me ask you, if this is that in, that meeting, that was, and have not been approved, so when do we expect to see the minutes?
We will have it the next meeting. Because of power outage, they were not completed, and I didn't want to rush having them, so I needed proof them.
Okay. All right, let's try not to get too far.
Yes, sir.
Item 4, action items. Resolution number TCFC -2023-02 to approve inducing the Citizen House Gilbert Apartments in partnership with Endeavor Real Estate Group to be located at approximately 6103 half North State Highway 130, and authorizing the negotiation and execution of the term sheet and other matters in connection therewith.
Okay, so action item A through D is all with the same developer. It's Endeavor. So the terms are generally all the same. And as you can see from your backup, they're actually in different locations throughout Austin, Travis County. So what I'm going to do is have Mr. Plummer now come and basically summarize those terms. So we're going to take down the agenda and have Mr. Plummer provide an overview, and then we can answer questions. So with that, Jim? I think you're on mute currently.
Good morning, y'all. The first 4 projects we're considering are from Endeavor, and they are 4 projects that 1 is already under construction and 3 more that are proposed. The first one is Bergstrom. It's a 207 unit project. The next is Gilbert at 180.
Is that the,
Jim, you're gonna have to start over.
is that the best one, guys? If it is, I'll just move close to them.
I think there's a mic on the other side.
Can you hear me, Patrick?
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so we have 4 projects, all proposed by Endeavor. The first project's one called Bergstrom, and it is under construction. It is a 414 unit project that will have 207 affordable units. 10% of the units will be set aside at 60% of median income, and this will be true for all of these projects. And 40% will be set aside for individuals whose income is 80% of median income. All of these units will be rent restricted and adjusted by family size and bedroom size. The project, the general structure, follows our norm. It is a 75-year lease to the Endeavor entity that will go out and raise the debt and equity for the project. You're not issuing any debt. You're not making any investment. You will simply be a landlord of these projects. In exchange for that, you'll receive a $250,000 closing fee. You'll receive annual rent in these projects, which will roughly equate to 25% of the sales tax savings on the project. And that will be reset upon initial sale. You will receive 25%, well, actually, it's $15,000 per door in sales tax savings on all of the projects except for Bergstrom, because Bergstrom is already under construction and those contracts are in place. Upon the sale of the project, you will receive 15% of the sale proceeds after the payment of the debt and the return of equity and an 8% preferred return. And I misstated, it is 20% of the tax savings. And I want the board to understand what we did. They proposed 50% of the units at 80%, and we would get 25% of the tax savings for doing that. And we went back to them and asked them to put in 10% at 60%, and in exchange agreed to lower our rent down to 20% of the tax savings for these projects. And Luke is here, and we can walk through each of the projects separately if you'd like to do that. The other three projects are new construction projects. They're all 360 units. And they are proposed to all be undertaken hopefully within this year. And how much detail would you like us to go through on each of these projects, or would you like Luke to introduce who Endeavor is?
I think we'd like a synopsis of each one individually.
Okay. So Luke, you want to do that? You want me to do that?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Excuse me. Do you want me to pull up I see the individuals. Do you want me to pull up the kind of presentation of the backup, or how would you like me to do it?
I think that'd be helpful.
Okay, let me see if I can. It says host disabled participant screen. I can't share it for now. If somebody can give me the ability to, and I should be able to pop it up.
You're working on it, sir.
Excuse me. And while that's going on, if somebody's working on getting me the ability to share, I can at least talk about Endeavor a little bit, which, could help. I'm Luke Philippi. I've been with Endeavor just under 4 years. I run our multifamily platform. We've been doing multifamily for probably 8 years now, and have done, for over 20 years, mixed use development, commercial development, retail, and a lot of other things in the community. We're Austin based, we all live here. This is our backyard, and we care very much about our city and county, and most of us live in this county, including myself. We started off doing retail. We built the domain, we built Saltillo, we built some things that I think a lot of people around town know, and decided that family was going to be a big part of our future. Again, 6-7 years or 8 years ago, and started doing really complicated high-rise projects, and then realized we really wanted to cater to more of the, call it, entire city. And so I was brought on 4 years ago, and my focus is primarily, call it, low-rise garden projects like these that we're talking, all the way to, a little bit more dense, but not the fancy high-rise stuff. And so since I've been here, we have started 12 projects, the majority of which are, call it, market rate garden projects. I have another probably 20 that I'm working on. And so we're pretty competent and have a lot of experience in this market. We have, and let me know, by the way, interrupt me at any point if I can pull up the presentation.
Right now.
Oh, I can do it. Yeah, here we go.
You host, so if you could, after you're done sharing your presentation, just turn it back over to us as hosts. Then we'll
Okay.
be good to go.
Absolutely will do. And so we started building these types of projects that I'm showing you here about 3 years ago. And so in doing so, my initial kind of thesis was we wanted to build to just a larger demographic. So here's a picture of one of the clubhouses that we have, the pool, and excuse me, I'm sorry. It'll be very similar. All the quality will be very similar. I mean, call it nearly identical. The FF&E, the landscaping, what we're building. These projects that we built are institutional quality projects. This is a map of the various locations of them. So this is, Jim mentioned the first one that would occur. The second Decker, the Citizen House Decker and Gilbert are similar time frame, not exactly the same, but similar. And Howard would be towards the end of the year. Here is the, excuse me, I'm trying to get on my side. Kind of a breakdown of what Jim said. We're building total of about 1,500 units, of which half of them will be between 80 and 60% of MFI. And then we have a calendar breakdown of when projects would start. So as Jim said, Bergstrom has already started. It's already under construction, and in July should start leasing first units. Then Gilbert in April, Decker in July, and in November, all of this year. Oftentimes developers will come probably to you all and say, hey, I'm working on this project. I have it under contract, all that stuff. And and that's how we do it a lot too. In this case, we own all of these sites. So call it the probability that there is an issue or something occurring is far lower. We have utilities, we own it. We're very close to permits on many of them. So these are what I would call very real deals. Then, I'm not going to get into all this, but this is total cash to the Travis County Housing Authority over time, over the whole period of our investment. And then some representative photos. Do you guys have any desire to look at the video of kind of the product?
What is the breakdown per year? You said over time. Can you slide your chart back up a little bit?
It doesn't this chart doesn't go over year, so it won't help us, but I will show you that on each individual project, and it will show you that. So more representative photos. Again, I just would stress that these projects, I've now have, again, about 7 of this type of product under construction. Every one of them is financed through a regional or national lender, and all of them were large institutional investors with billions of dollars of capital. So they have a lot of options.
Okay, I think Jan, you have a question?
I do. Good morning. I'm Jan Winnick, one of the board members here. And I heard your introduction on Endeavor. This could be a mistake on my part. It's kind of a blunt question. Are you the same Endeavor that put forward the Statesman Fund?
We are. I was not personally part of that. That's a different group that does complicated high-rise, vertical mixed-use stuff. But yes, we did Statesman and Domain,
Okay.
all of those.
And this might be a question back for our council. Who's setting the percentage of how deeply affordable the percentage of units? Where's that formula coming from? On how many are allocated for each level of affordability?
Jim,
The statute requires that you have 50% at 80%. In this transaction, we went back to the developer and asked them to add 10% at 60%. The rents and the income limits are set according to HUD's requirements at both the 60 and 80% of median income limits. And so you will have a different rent limit for a 1-bedroom versus a 2-bedroom. And that's basically established by HUD.
Correct. Now, if I might add, as we talked about with the standard terms, we've been asking for that reduction in the tiering for each of the projects. So that's why you see each of the projects, you'll see that you'll have 10% at 60. Unless they are applying for affordability unlocked, which obviously requires affordability unlocked. It's the city's program. And they have even further tiering and skewing as far as income, but that's because they're required to do such as a result of funding. So in some of the projects, you do see even further skewing as far as depths of affordability, but that's because they're applying for affordability unlocked.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah, I wanted to know primarily, at these locations, has there been a traffic study? Because it's putting 1,500 homes in that area is gonna impact the community tremendously. And has that been taken into consideration?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't totally hear, but I think I heard if there was a traffic impact study. Was that the question?
Yes.
Yes, yes. In Travis County, actually, unlike the city of Austin, they require a traffic impact analysis at every development deal. So, the Bergstrom project's been completed. The Gilbert project has been completed. The Decker project is nearly completed, and all of those are accounted for in our work. The Howard project is in process, so that would be the only one that has. I don't foresee any issues, but the question isn't usually, can you build something? It's what costs of offsite traffic mitigation costs are there? And so we have dollars, that have been recommended by our consultants. I wouldn't anticipate it changing materially. So either yes, they're all completed, or they're very close to it.
If I might add that there is a requirement for what's called in the city and even in the county, rough proportionality. So say, for instance, the number of peak hour trips exceed whatever the threshold is, then there have to be improvements, typically like the closest intersection or even traffic lights. All those things get taken into account when they do the traffic study. So it's called rough proportionality. But again, if you build a Walmart, in a community, you'll have to do an impact analysis, and then rough proportionality comes into play, which means you may have to do curb cuts, you may have to do a turning lane, that sort of thing, and that cost will be borne by the developer. In this case, we're not talking about that significant number of impact probably because it's residential. You're talking about all times throughout the day. So in most cases, that wouldn't necessarily be the case, but they do a study and figure out what the requirements for improvements within the vicinity of the project are.
I appreciate that. I'm just familiar with some of the areas that
Yeah, sure.
between the hours of 6:30 and 9 o'clock, it gets pretty, in some of them.
Yeah, Patrick's right. I mean, we have some projects, Gilbert as an example, where we're having to put in a turn lane and widen a road. Again, all that's in our budget, but the county will dictate that for us. So here's Bergstrom, an overview map. Obviously, we named it because it's relatively close to the airport, substantial amount of jobs. The site's about 34 acres on Burleson Road. You're probably a 8-minute drive to downtown, so you're very infill. To be able to live in these types of rent structures, this is what we consider a very infill project. So we like this project a lot.
Luke, hold on one second.
Yeah.
And you have a follow-up?
I'm so sorry, it's hard to hear us, I know, but just to follow up on Wilmer's question, which was a great question. There was only one adjustment requested as a result of the traffic impact study, and that was one turn lane on one property.
No, I don't have the full list of them. They go, every project's unique and they all have different adjustments. So Gilbert, as an example, had a road that we had to really build out, Gilbert Road, and it had some drainage that we had to, add some additional drainage, had a turn lane. The county does, they tell us what to do. And so whatever they ask us to do, we end up having to kind of work through. But we can provide you a list of whatever they've asked, but we don't have a say in that, so to speak. It's the county that drives that.
Right, and you can't get site plan approval until those are
So
so
just fair enough to say that the adjustments that were made were.
Yes,
compliant. Yeah, thank you.
building
Oh,
would
yeah.
have to be.
Yeah. Can be a field-
That's right. You
Yeah,
can't,
yeah.
you can't get a permit without it. You have to have it. You have to do it to get a permit.
But I do have one question though. I mean, the assumption is, hopefully this is an assumption. Have we done an assessment of public transportation for those who we would be assisting in getting housing in these areas? Because, you know, that would be something that we would want to take into consideration.
But I know Decker has, and also, a couple of those do already have.
So like a study,
Yeah, just to know that, you know, that
impact.
as we are looking at each of these properties, right, are they accessible to public transportation so people can get from, you know, tornado? That's not always the case. Like if you're looking out in Elgin,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
you know, I mean, you don't have that, but, you know, have we looked at that for these sites to see what's available? To make
Maybe a
it,
summary report on that. Is that possible?
just to have them, you know, just look at it and
So-
just give us some feedback.
Sure, and we can, in the future, we can make sure we talk about access to transit, as far as that's concerned. I'm gonna be honest, you know, as far as the standard for access to transit, you're talking about a quarter mile from a bus stop, which is still pretty far, but that's what we use as a barometer, because this is Texas and not Northern Virginia. So it probably still not meet the standards for someone who is in a situation where they probably are still reliant on the vehicle, but there are, you know, standards that they look at, and they're fairly loose in my opinion, but yes, we will, in each case, they do meet that requirement, but we certainly would make sure as far as our write-up in the future, that we'll include this paragraph about transit and access to goods and services. So we can have that, but we'll make sure we have that included in there.
And the only reason why I raised that,
It's
because
not a,
I know traffic today is hectic in most of some cases, but when you dump 1,500
sure,
families in there, it's probably 2.5 times of that, so.
Right.
You spread, and it can impact it down the road, so.
Yeah.
But, main thing is that I think on most of the projects that I'm aware of, that I've seen that he's talking about, there is that adequate transportation, buses do pass there.
yeah, like I said, I mean,
Yeah, we just want to know. I mean.
no, like I said, it'll be in the next report. We'll make sure we include that as a,
Great question.
yeah, we'll include that in the next report. We'll
Yep.
make sure we put that, we'll add as one of the items.
Okay, do you want to continue with Bergstrom?
Yep. And so this is Bergstrom specifically. These are the breakout. I'll show you by month or by year, excuse me, but total dollars to the Housing Authority. We have our timeline here. Again, we've already started construction on this project, so it'll start leasing soon. We talked about some highlights, just distance to the airport, to downtown, major thoroughfares, and then a breakdown of rents. So, you know, as an example, if you look here, your one bedrooms currently, now we haven't started renting, but we anticipate it being at $1,600. It could be, you know, in the market side of things, it'll be as high as the market will bear. At an 80% affordable, you're at $1,545, and at a 60, you're at $1,160. So there's, you know, as you get lower, obviously more of a decrease. On our 2 bedrooms, you're at $1,900, and then 17 and 13. So that we have this table on every page, so you can go through them all. I think what's unique about our projects too is there's been a trend over my career, 15, 20 years, of apartment units getting smaller and smaller and smaller. We've specifically built these apartments at much larger square footage averages. So this project, you know, they're all close to 1,000 square foot average. They're either a little above or a little below. That's probably 150 square feet larger on average than what the typical brand new garden apartments built today. So we were specifically building these so that families could actually have some space and people would be able to have space. It's kind of a dying design, so to speak. This is the budget, and we won't go through all of this, but this is effectively the entire budget to build the project, inclusive of the PFC fees and the TIA impact stuff that people were asking about and all that stuff. On this project, it's fully set, it's under construction. On other projects, it's subject to change slightly, but we built a lot of these, so we have a very good idea of where they are. And then on the annual cash flow side of it, this is to the housing authority. So you can kind of look and see where the dollars hit with obviously the largest jump is whenever this is an anticipated sale. Effectively, whenever we sell the project, you guys, stay in that project, and Jim can speak to the structure better than I can, but that's what it looks like on this project.
Well,
And then-
just how, for a minute, if I may, that pool area, is there, I don't see any fence around that. Is that protected in any way?
Yeah, you can't see it very well, but there's a fence right back here, and there's a fence from our vantage point where your eyeball, where our eyes are looking. There's a fence there too, but again, that's by code. You have to fence a pool by law. They will not give you a permit to occupy without it. So they all will be fenced.
Yeah, I see there, but I didn't.
No, that's a real.
I don't see it.
It's right. It's really, it's there. You just, yes, it's hard to see. There's bushes and stuff covering it too. This building is the fence right here. So you're allowed to use a building as your fence as long as there are no doors. So there's no door right here. And so the building acts as a fence. And so, yeah, it's all to code. Then this is the in-depth, call it financial analysis, and it goes through all the way from the revenues all the way down to what the PFC receives. The gold is where the housing authority is involved, so to speak, taking a portion of it.
Hey, Luke.
Yep.
Question. Just saw one of your previous slides. What is Endeavor's hold period before you hope to have an initial sale? Was it 76 months?
Yeah, I think we generally in here are around 5 years from completion of construction, which is why they're kind of look like 7-year time periods, but that includes construction and then leasing it up, stabilizing it, cash flowing for a while, and then selling it. So it's usually
We get that as a general timeline for all 4 projects.
yeah, it's the same for all of them. That's right, roughly.
Got it.
And so, and then here's a site plan. You can't see it, but Burleson Road's over here. This is amenity center, units, dog park. There's a really pretty grove of trees back here where we'll have grills. And this site's unique. It actually has about 12 acres of basically parkland that we just couldn't build on. So it'll have, areas for dogs to run and play and people, and a lot of land. This is our Decker project. We actually built a project that's right on this corner. This is MLK and Decker. We built this one and sold it already. And it was highly sought after, did incredibly well, leased up in probably 6 months. So, you can drive downtown in 15 minutes. It was just very desirable. So this one has a very good case study that we've already done. But Walter Lawn Park out here, 130, Tesla's not far away, Miller Airport. So you're central to a lot of things. And then if we're looking here, same thing, we kind of broke out total dollars to the housing authority timeline. So this would be, we've closed the land already. We're talking about the PFC and then starting construction here in a few months. And then here, if you look here, our market rate, this project will have some 3 bedrooms too. And so you can kind of come down and see our 1 bedrooms, you're between $200 and $600 cheaper with the affordable units on the 1s, and the 2s are even more so. And the threes are similar. So substantial discount to where the market is. Budget, again, some of this goes to the housing authority. And then annual cash flows. And this includes what Jim mentioned. The other one we had already under construction, but this one has the sales tax savings. And so the dollars look a little bigger up front because of that. And then you have your payments throughout. And then when we sell it, your portion of the proceeds. And then again, the more complex cash flow analysis that y'all can dig through. And if anybody has questions, feel free to, email me. And then the 20% that Jim mentioned of the anticipated taxes. So that's the calculation there. Site plan. This is Decker right here. We don't have a fancy site plan, so forgive me, but this is Decker here. This down here is going south. So this will take you to MLK. And then if you go north, of course, you're going to Walter E. Long Park. Any questions on that one before I jump to Gilbert?
No.
So Gilbert, this one we were very excited about. And again, we own this land already. We bought it. We like it. It's just a Tesla play. We've actually had conversations with folks over there, and there's, as you know, there's been conversations about 10 to 20,000 jobs, but with all the ancillary jobs and subcontractors that work with them and all that, we think there's probably going to be at least 100,000 jobs and a massive need for housing in an area that doesn't have a lot. So we bought this site and to work with them. Dollars to the housing authority here. We closed this land in March of last year, so we've owned it for a fair amount of time, or a couple of years ago now. We have our MOU we're talking about now, PFC start, and then the construction start. So this one will be able to start. It's probably going to push, honestly, maybe a month, probably May, but it's right around there. And then our breakdown of rents, similar story as Bergstrom. And then budget, again, dollars coming to the PFC. This does include, again, the TIA stuff. I talked about the turn lane and the road expansion. So all of that's included in here. And then annual cash flows. And then same story when in the year of sale, we see the larger jump. And then the more complex, just whole story, for lack of a better word. And then this is the tax analysis. So what the ground lease payment is through the PFC, or that the housing authority total, ad valorem, and then the percentage received. And then this is 130 right here. And this is Gilbert Road right here. There's actually a little elementary school that's, maybe half a mile down from here. So we love building, near schools where people can get their kids into school easily, walkable often. And then obviously amenity center. And this is going to be just kind of a green wetland area that people will be able to go walk their dog and stuff. And you can notice there's a pretty large set off the highway. So we don't like to build up right onto it. And then Howard's the final one. So this is the site, this little circle, well, interesting shape around a circle. Howard Road, Palmer. Excuse me. I think we all know Samsung obviously continues to expand and grow in this area, and Taylor, obviously. East Village is a large mixed-use development. You can go out there now. This is all under construction. So substantial amount of homes, but also retail, hotel, commercial. They're building a little office campus here. And then obviously Tech Ridge, 40,000 jobs just right down the street. I don't know, this is a couple miles away, or 3 miles away. So you have a large node of jobs here. So we like to be close to, schools and jobs, lifestyle. And so it's all started to come out here in a major way. Again, summary for what the housing authority will receive over time. This is the last one that would start. So you're looking at an end of year start. It says November now. It'd be, plus or minus that time frame. And then we have our rent structure here. So, 1 bedroom's at $1,670, The 80%, they're 100 and whatever, $30 less, and roughly $500 less here. And then 2 bedrooms, you have 2,000 and 300 less and 700 less. And then here you're on the 3 bedroom, you're whatever that is, about 300 less and 800 less. And then budgets, this one is probably the one job that has a little bit more variability in the budget. I wouldn't say substantial, but we're still finalizing that TIA. Howard's a very large road. I don't anticipate anything material there, but this one has a little bit more room to go, where we've just received first round of comments on our permit. So you usually end up going through 3 or 4 rounds. The others, we have 2 to 3 rounds, if not the permit. Annual cash flows. See here. And then again, the more complicated one, anybody welcome to review and ask me questions. Same type of tax analysis. We're looking at, this is the PFC's portion, or the housing authority versus the total and the percentage of that, what it would have been. And again, we're quite a bit of ways on this one, so that's why this is a little rougher looking, but here's Howard Lane. This way's west and this way's east. So you go to 130 here, you go to 35 here in Tech Ridge, and this is amenity center. And then an overview, I kind of gave you the quick spiel on Endeavor. So I'll pause there, and then if anybody has questions, happy to talk about it.
Patrick, maybe you get what happens at the time of sale and what's the guarantees on affordability for how long?
Yeah, I'm gonna let Jim cover that again. Jim, did you hear the question?
I did not.
What happens at time of sale? Essentially, like the breakout, who gets what?
At the time of sale,
Just how long will it remain affordable after sale?
Okay.
at the time of sale, whether it's 5 years or 7 years, they will get to decide when they want to sell. When they sell, there will be a sales price. They will pay off their debt. They will pay back any unreturned equity investment to their equity partner. There'll be an 8% preferred return on that equity. And then whatever is left over, you will receive 15% of that. Once the sale occurs, the lease stays in place, and the new buyer begins to pay you rent on the exact same terms as Endeavor did. And that will go over the full term of the lease. It will increase by 3% a year. Then when that new buyer sells, you will be paid a 2% commission on that sales price. And that 2% commission is roughly equal to the 15% after the repayment of debt and equity. But we don't want to have to look at everybody else's debt and equity structure, so we converted it to a commission.
Person,
I'm gonna. Okay. So Jim, in essence, the 75 years remains in place for affordability.
Yes.
Is adding extra. So yes, it doesn't change affordability over the period, even if there's a seller.
Yeah.
The lease remains in place. It doesn't change with the new owner.
So another question for you, Mr. Howard, that you could possibly explain to some of us. How are the affordable units managed in terms of who gets them? Is that something that the housing authority is doing in terms of applicants, or is it, how does that work?
No, we do not manage that property. I mean, it would be like any other tax credit property where someone would be, I mean, it would be the responsibility of the management company. Jim, I'm gonna let you speak to that as well, just because in many cities, obviously the issue about how enforcement of the affordable properties is being managed. Maybe even our council, Matty Doe, for the developer, may be able to speak to it as well. Because we're not the only ones actually doing this type of development. So,
And just so that we would be able to understand, have some insight into how.
yeah, so yeah, it wouldn't be the purview of our organization to ensure that the appropriate people are being screened, that sort of thing. That would not be just like we would not do on the tax credit properties, but I'm gonna let them share a little bit of insight on how that's being handled.
When we close the transaction, we'll record a regulatory agreement against the property. That regulatory agreement will mandate that the management company get a certified income certificate from all tenants that are in the affordable units. The certificates certify that they are what their income level is. Then they have to go and have a third-party source document to verify that income. It is the same process we use for tax credit transactions. Then in addition, we require an annual third-party file audit to certify to us that they in fact are providing low-income housing at the restricted rents. And so we will receive a third-party audit every year certifying to us that they are in fact doing what they're supposed to do in providing affordable housing.
And so receiving that information is something that we will oversee.
We will be, yes, that is a requirement of the terms. What I was speaking to is this initial screening option and leasing those up wouldn't be our responsibility, but ensuring that the third party certification is sufficient and accurate would be our responsibility as an organization. So that would be coming to us each year, just like for the tax credit.
We want to make a motion?
Yeah, I also motion we approve, all 4 items, 2023, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Second.
All those in favor?
Mr. Libby, could you make us proceed, please?
I couldn't hear that.
Okay. Motion passed.
Did you switch it back?
So we're good with Luke.
I don't think he heard you.
I will send it to you.
I don't think I'm sharing the screen if y'all are talking to me. I tried to unshare it, so I should be off of it.
Yeah, okay, so can you go to the 3 dots at the top right-hand corner of my screen, of my video? And then it should have an option that says make code.
I'm sorry, are you talking to me or are you talking to Luke? Forgive me, but I still don't hear. Somebody talking to Luke. Am I supposed to do something?
Yes, Luke, we're talking to you.
Okay, what am I supposed to do? I see something.
So if you go to my video, the Zoom Housing for Travis County, there should be 3 dots in the top right-hand corner of my video. If you click on them, it should say make code or something along those lines.
I'm just gonna cancel out entirely and jump back on because I don't see that and I don't want to mess this up. So I'll be right back. Oh, here we go. I see now. It's letting me assign it. I'm going to assign it to the Zoom house here.
There we go. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. So moving on to item E, resolution number TCFC 2023-06 to approve inducing the Springdale Apartments in partnership with Heartwood Management LLC to be located at approximately 1200 Springdale Road and authorizing negotiation and execution of a term sheet and other matters in connection therewith.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
bring
and,
up-
or, I'm sorry, or is the Endeavor matter over? Do you want us to stay on?
You're done.
Thank you kindly. Appreciate it.
Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we'll have Jim to provide an overview. This area, this is located in northeast east Austin, off Springdale Road. Why don't we go to the demonstration?
Okay, this is a 348 unit project at 1200 Springdale Road. This project is an Austin Affordability Unlocked project. And so it will have 50% of the units at 80%. It will have 10% of the units at 60%. We'll have 20% of the units at 50%. Once again, it's a very, very similar structure. All units are rent restricted, adjusted by family size and by bedroom size. It is the same terms financially as the four that we just looked at. And it is a project that will begin construction. If we can, as soon as we approve this, they will start moving through the process. But it is basically the same terms and conditions. And I'm happy to run through them again, but I don't care to bore you with that. It's once again 20% of the property tax savings because of the lower income levels that this project will reach.
Sure, and if I may, again, because of the affordability unlocked, you have the deeper income tiering of that's adjusted. So obviously it's beyond, it goes even further than the standard.
Correct. I just wonder.
Yeah.
For 77 pages.
No, they didn't have any others.
Not, but can I hear the location one more time?
Sure, it's Springdale Road. It's. Do we have it here?
A similar area.
Yeah, it's Springdale Road south of 290.
No problem. I'll look it up later.
We'll send you, we'll send you some details as they provide us to us, but do we have the general vicinity? But we'll provide it.
It's between 12th and MLK.
This is important. This is important property. I'm very interested. So anything I get later would be great.
Sure.
Okay, do we want to make a motion to approve this?
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, none? Okay. Moving on to item 5, regular agenda, project status update. Pretty long.
Sure. Project status update. So that project actually, we didn't, we don't have any new projects. We didn't know that Springdale got further along. So we actually approved the Springdale project. So we're in discussions related to other projects, but they're in the very formative stages. So we didn't list it in the packet. That was going to be a discussion about Springdale, but again, we were able to come to terms with Springdale, so we don't have any new projects to discuss with you today.
Okay.
Fortunately, we now have an approved project, so we'll move forward.
Okay, then moving on to item B. Finance, Super.
Good morning. So what's included in the budget, the board packet is the financials for period ending December. And December is also the fiscal year end. So we are in the process of closing the books. So what I have there is what I have on page 75 is the operating statements for TCFC and also a separate schedule for the set aside funds. Since it's the year end, we had to kind of settle a couple of things, and one of it was we had a overrun on the construction or rehab at Eastern Oaks. So we needed another $144,000 to kind of settle, kind of make the book balance. So we took a contribution of $144,000 from TCFC. And likewise from the set aside funds, this was already approved in a prior board resolution for Maynard Town Phase 2. I think a year and a half ago or so, about 600,000 was set aside, 653,000 was set aside for Maynard Town Phase 2. And through now, we have already spent about 250,000 in just in pre-development costs. So to kind of settle the funds, we took $245,000 from the set aside funds. To close the year, we have about $6 million altogether in TCFC. And I've been moving most of the funds to the investment pool because the interests have been going up and it's been very attractive. Rather than have it sit in our bank account and earn 0.5%, we are able to earn 4% at the tax pool. So as of the end of January, almost all the funds are there.
So do we understand what caused the overrun in construction?
There was a COVID delay. The construction itself was delayed.
Right, we haven't been able to close primarily because of TDHCA. So the longer it takes us to close, the more the cost will escalate. So we're hoping that any day now we can get the final approval of TDHCA so we can go ahead and close. But this is 2 years in the making. And we can't rush TDHCA, so they work with them on the time frame. But we've been working with them, provide them additional information as requested, but they've been taking quite a while to get this done.
Mr. Mayor, this predates me on the board a bit.
Sure.
What was the nature of the refurbishment needed?
There's
And
no-
so we had some quick summary of what
Sure.
we're talking about the cost.
Sure, no problem. So the housing authority bought two city blocks in the city of Maynard several years ago, and they developed one full city block, which is referred to now as Maynard Town Apartments. The other block was never developed and sitting there vacant for several years. There's been always thought about putting that land to good use. So the board has pondered over many things, apartments, townhomes, things of that nature. And so maybe this probably started at least 5-6 years ago when we started looking at opportunities to develop the property. We identified that the Housing Trust Fund with TDHCA allow for there to be development of deeply affordable units, 30% AMI units, which really works with the market over in the city of Maynard because numbers over there are a little bit lower as it relates to what the demand is in terms of rents and such. So we were able to get an allocation of those funds from TDHCA, which is taking us some time, but obviously that created a gap. So they were able to give us about $2 million in funding for that purpose. So just stop me when I say wrong numbers, but we were we also got $250,000 from Texas State Affordable Housing Corporation, TSHAC as it's referred to also help with this effort. When they went to underwriting, they suggested that 2 of those So we identified based on the zoning and land use, because they down zone doing this process of us working on this, that we could only build 20 units on that site. So the property got rezoned during this period, and we weren't necessarily grandfathered because we didn't have a development plan in place. So we could develop 20 units on that site. And now, so there'll be 20 units of 30% AMI units max, and then 2 units at 50% AMI, which was the recommendation of PDACA underwriting when they looked at the numbers. So what that remains is the closing. The TCFC and its set aside of 50% of its proceeds, it fit very well into the need to augment the funds because we needed another $1 million or so to make the project whole, in addition to money from TCHAP. So what we've been waiting on is final closure and approval from TDACA. So I'm briefly summarizing because there were a lot of things that happened during this period. We had to acquire, the property got rezoned, we had to acquire the easement between the two parcels. We had to change the material because now it's in a designated historic district. So there's a lot that has changed, and that actually increased the cost as well, because now they want to designate the area as historic, which I'm a fan of. However, that changed the material that we're going to be using for the exterior. So we are hoping, cross our fingers, that this spring we'll be able to get everything we need for a closing so that we can move forward and break ground. But again, these delays and sort of, for good and bad reasons, have caused the price to go up ever so slightly.
So there's nothing you need to do. You're just waiting on that.
Correct.
And this is actual money spent that went up.
Actually, I can give the board a little bit of an update. We have closed on both funding sources, and I am working now with the contractors to set a hard date this month in which to begin mobilization and construction. So we have.
Do we have a contract locked in on what the cost of the project is going to be?
Yes, ma'am, we do. The name of the contractor is F&H Construction, and we have executed a contract with them for it.
How much is it? Is it to build?
I believe it's 4.3 million. Yes, ma'am.
And do you have someone actually managing construction? Is that be you?
I will be managing this. I manage.
Payouts, that type.
Yes, I'll be reviewing each draw that comes through. I'll be doing draw inspections, and I work with without trying to take up too much of your valuable time. I just want you to know that I do the projects that are within the housing authority. I pretty much want to take those on myself, and it's not just me, but it is a team, and I function with our architect, our engineer, our general contractor. We all communicate with each other. We all copy each other on emails. We all meet regularly, and we all come out on site to address any issues. And we come out on site at the time of every pre-draw inspection.
And one last question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is the construction company and the architect, are they a team? Did they come together as a team, or are they individual?
No, ma'am, these are independent parties.
Yeah, so we procured an architect several years ago. We started with our rehab project, and he's overseeing all of our design work for each of our internal projects. And then we've hired a general contractors, as Keith alluded to, specifically for this project. But our architect, I mean, he reports to us, and then, so they are a team, but they are part of they are connected in that regard, you know, outside of the relationship with us. But to Ms. Winnie, your question about the funds being spent, there were pre-development costs.
Yeah.
The cost to replat, the cost to purchase those easements, those things, those costs were upfront costs that we had. It's a cost of doing business. So that money had to come from somewhere.
Appreciate it.
Mhm.
Okay, anything else? Okay. Moving on to item 6, board committee reports, real estate committee. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry. So once we close the book, when is the next scheduled audit for 2022?
The auditors are going to be here in April.
Okay.
So this is February, so they are scheduled to come here on the first week of April.
So as it relates to the housing authorities, we have to do an unaudited financials 90 days after the end of the fiscal year.
Like 60.
60 days after the end of the fiscal year. The fiscal year end is December 31st. So essentially by February 28th, we have to submit unaudited financials to HUD, but also 9 months after the end of the fiscal year, we're required to do a full-blown audit, which is what he's referring to. And ideally, we like to get it done sooner versus later. We did it sooner last year than we did the previous year, but our goal is to get it done as soon as we can. But we are required to have those are the two milestones related to the audit.
That's good to know in terms of understanding
Mhm.
workload and what it is that you need to focus on.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, item number 6, do we have any board committee reports? No. Okay. Item number 7, new and unfinished business. No.
Well, you raised a question earlier. You said you getting what, 0.5% in interest?
Yeah, with IDC Bank.
Yeah,
Where is
have
it
you
getting-
looked at other facilities?
Uh,
Other facilities to move money into,
Yeah,
that some of them are paying much more than that, especially with the prime fees going up.
Yeah.
So,
As he mentioned, we have a tax pool, which you might want to explain what that is.
it's
I know what Texas.
Okay, well, I didn't know for those who may not be.
But you're not limited to putting money in tax pool. though.
No, sir. I'm just saying that was one source that we were.
Tax pool zone, it's kind of like our insurance. They don't pay really well. So that's.
We can certainly continue, but
Yeah, just look around at some of the other lending institutions and see what they're paying. And see if you can move your money there. That's all. We're trying, especially if you're going to invest.
Any other new or unfinished business? Okay, is there any need to go into executive session? Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay.